Okay, well, it's 7:05, so maybe we should get started because we have lots of things to go through, an excellent presentation. So we don't want to miss anything. So welcome everybody. I'm Jackie Rivas with the DC chapter of Partners of America. Partners of the Americas, and it's a beautiful evening here in DC, but the West, I understand, is undergoing record heat and drought. So this presentation is very timely. Partners is about connections, and so we're making a wonderful connection this evening. It's a follow-up from 2019 when the DC chapter hosted Marina Carvalho, who is an environmental educator from Iricambí, and she spent her time here educating us about what's going on in Iricambí. So tonight we hope to renew our ties with Binka and the wonderful Rainforest restoration. Binga is co-director of Iricambí, and she's going to talk to us about the importance of rainforests, not only for climate change, to combat climate change, but also to protect biodiversity and its importance in the health of all of us. The rest of the title is Rainforest Restoration in the Time of COVID, and our encroachment on the rainforest, contact with zoonotic diseases. And so we really do need to protect and restore our natural environment. So before Binga gets underway, our DC chapter president, Rochelle Richmond, is going to say a few words, and also the Colorado chapter president, Dwight Hicks, will say a few words. They have a long-lasting connection with the company in Minas Gerais. So Rochelle, if you want to say a few words.
Sure. Thank you, Jackie. And to just let everyone know, Jackie did a wonderful job organizing this. So we want to give kudos to her for her hard work and dedication. Thank you again, Jackie. You did a great job. Welcome, everyone. Welcome on this beautiful day. Hopefully it's a nice day on your end as it is on ours up here in DC. But I want to welcome you all. My name is Rochelle Richmond, and I am the president of the District of Columbia's Partners of America chapter. And I wanted to just briefly say our mission. So the Washington, D.C. Partners of America chapter, through volunteers, brings together development professionals, government officials, business leaders, educators, and artists in our hemisphere to match them with resources. We acknowledge, we work with the knowledge and funding opportunities together because it's about us working as a team. We empower citizens to become agents of change and develop lasting solutions to tough challenges that we all go through. We believe that through partnership, we can enhance social, economic, and cultural well-being across Americas. We had a great exchange with Marina Carvalho. She came in here, as Jackie mentioned, in November 2019. Her impact led us to follow up with Binka to further speak about the restoration and what we can do, as Jackie mentioned, to just be together, be inclusive, and just be more educated about environmental impact. So Binka, we do welcome you, and we definitely look forward to your presentation. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. And Dwight, welcome to you.
Jackie, thank you for putting this together. It's wonderful. And Binka, thank you for being here, and thank you for having an amazing rainforest restoration project in Iricambí. Over the years, Iricambí and Colorado Partners of the Americas have formed a strong bond dedicated to introducing students and teachers alike to the amazing attributes of the Atlantic rainforest. Binka's visits to Colorado and Wyoming always bring the positive vibes that are emitted by the work accomplished at Iricambí. Betty Brown, past Secretary of Colorado Partners, is here with us today, and she brings some thoughts about how our two groups have joined together over this long stretch of friendship that we all embrace. So I would like to turn this over to Betty. Betty?
Unmute. I am unmuted.
Okay.
Seldom am I muted, to tell you the truth, but but tonight I'm unmuted and I have the opportunity to just say a couple of words about the long collaboration that the Colorado chapter has had with Iracombe. Many members of the Colorado chapter have gone to Iracombe to plant trees, to water trees, to teach English, and to interact and to visit about business plans. And we have welcomed Binka and other members of the Minas Gerais chapter to Colorado, including Andrea, who's with us tonight from Belo Horizonte. It has been a wonderful collaboration, and we are so grateful for all of the time we've had together. And yes, as Dwight said, especially for the way that Binka energizes any room that she enters. And tonight she enters our rooms from a long distance, but we look forward to the day that we can once again hug and exchange smiles in person. Thank you again for including us. And I'm anticipating, I've been excited all day about what Binka's going to say to us now.
Thank you, Betty. So shall I take it away?
Take it away, Binka, you're on.
All right. Well, first of all, thank you everybody who showed up. Thank you so much for coming. We know you have lots of things you could be doing with your time. And thank you partners for hosting this. And thank you DC chapter. And just thank you all of you who are here. And a big thank you to Zoom and to the internet, which is miraculously behaving beautifully. So it's great to be here. So now let's get to Rainforest. And like right now, there's so much going on. You know, some parts of the world, your part, beginning to emerge from the worst. Others, our part, still in the grip of the pandemic. And sickness and loss and economic hardship and just plain exhaustion. And so with so many concerns top of mind, and people struggling literally and figuratively to breathe, is this really a moment to worry about rainforests? So in our time together, I plan to just give a quick overview of rainforests and why they're important, look at the connection between rainforest destruction and COVID, give a short overview of what Iracombe does in terms of rainforest restoration, and show how COVID affected us and where we are going from here. So in the time of COVID, with people across the world struggling to breathe, what do rainforests do for us? Well, the first and most important thing in the context of struggling to breathe is generating oxygen and storing carbon. And the second thing, which is very germane to our discussion about rainforests and COVID, is that the forests provide habitat, and 80% of all the biodiversity on land is found in forests, rainforests. They give us food and medicine and timber and fuel. They stabilize soils and water. They make rain, transpiration, and they regulate the climate. That's something that's becoming increasingly important in Brazil at the moment when they're forecasting the worst drought in 100 years. And lastly, they just bring us health and joy. And if you've ever tried forest bathing, you will know just closing your eyes and being in the forest, how wonderful it makes you feel. So let's just do a whistle-stop tour of the forest. And we'll start with biodiversity. And there's immense variety of species A tropical forest can contain 486 different species of tree in 1 hectare. A temperate forest would contain just a few. And 80% of all the life in the forest is housed in the trees. So let's start in the canopy, and we'll work our way down through the different layers of the forest. So the next layer is the mid-story. And this is another ecosystem. And these branches that we see are super highways for all manner of animals and home to all manner of plants, including epiphytes, which get their nutrients from the air and the rain and don't even have their roots in the soil. And continuing going down, we get to the forest floor, yet another ecosystem. But please don't expect to see a big cat first time you come into the forest. Most of our animals are nocturnal. And now let's go down to the soil. And the soil is where there's simultaneously a process of decay and rebirth and constant recycling. And if we go underground, we get to discover the secret life of trees, which communicate with one another through their fungus mycelium, which sends nutrients from tree to tree via the root systems. So the wood wide web is the way that trees have of communicating and collaborating with one another. You know, dying trees return their nutrients to the pool. Mother trees feed saplings that are in the shade and would have less chance to thrive. And messages are exchanged between trees through the fungi, which release chemical signals through their roots. A magic world of secret life of trees. But of course, life underground has its share of villains. Some orchids hack the system and steal resources from nearby trees. Some trees spread toxins in self-defense to repel other species. And these can be powerful medicines if we use them correctly. So all living things depend on oxygen and exhale carbon. So trees are the ideal partners for people. They absorb carbon through their leaves, they store it in the soil, and they exhale oxygen. So if trees are so extraordinary, why don't we give them their proper value? If they generated Wi-Fi, we would plant 1 billion. It's too bad. They only generate the air that we breathe. And trees provide us, of course, with medicines for many ailments. The strongly scented aromatic trees like pine and eucalyptus help us breathe easier. Now, which of us doesn't remember Vicks vapor rub, you know, when you were a kid, and how comforting that was and how it helped you to breathe. And different parts of the tree provide medicine for different conditions: the roots, the leaves, the bark, the heartwood. Now, this tree is commonly known as dragon's blood, Croton urucurana, and the dark red viscous sap that you see there acts as a natural antibiotic and a second skin for wounds. And we first discovered this a long time ago when we first came to Irukandji, and I had a very special horse who got mixed up with a barbed wire fence and got very, very badly cut. And by the time we discovered, the skin was torn away from his chest. It was too late to sew it up. And I was in despair, because in a climate like this, it's very easy to get infected. And one of the wise men from the community said, don't worry. He went to this tree, he got some of that red viscous sap and he placed it on the wound, where it acts as a second skin and a disinfectant. And that horse completely recovered, and there was hardly any sign even of a scar. So there are incredible medicinal undiscovered properties in the trees. So far, only 2% of rainforest plants have even been tested for their medicinal properties. And yet today, about 120 of the drugs, regular prescription drugs, derived from rainforest plants are sold across the world, and they're used for cancer and leukemia, malaria, heart disease, bronchitis, rheumatism, diabetes, arthritis, and tuberculosis. So as we destroy forest ecosystems, we are destroying enormous quantities of biodiversity that before we have even discovered how they can help us, how these different substances can help us. And for forest bathing, we all know how intuitively, it's good for us to be in nature. But now we actually have scientific proof, because trees exude chemicals known as phytoncides. It's part of their defensive system. And these substances, when we inhale, they stimulate our immune systems, they lower stress levels, and they create just a strong feeling of well-being. And today, Jackie sent me a delightful article from the Wall Street Journal about making friends with trees, which was wonderful. And the idea of, if you're not in a forest and you can't forest braze, find the nearest tree. You can hug it if you like. You can talk to it. That tree has been through more in its life, probably, an old tree than you will ever go through. And it's something that is solid and comforting. And so if you haven't never tried it, see if you can go make friends with a tree. And you'll find that article in, I think, today's Wall Street Journal, but Jackie will send it to you if you need it. So delightful. So forests have all these incredible advantages and they make us feel good. But if we destroy our ecosystems, all sorts of unpleasant things can ensue. I mean, we know about disturbed weather patterns and water stress and floods and fires. But what can happen if we destroy our ecosystem is this: COVID and other zoonotic diseases. So zoonoses are diseases hosted by animals and transmissible to other species, including humans. So they can be caused by bacteria or fungi or protozoa or viruses. So think HIV, rabies, Ebola, Marburg, Zika, malaria, dengue, chikungunya, West Nile, leprosy, Lyme disease, the family of coronaviruses, and other emerging diseases yet to surface. Because WHO will tell you that 61% of all human diseases are zoonotic, and 75% of all emerging diseases are zoonotic. And how do these diseases get transmitted? Destroying ecosystems so that the species that live in these intact ecosystems have been coexisting for years with these viruses and these pathogens, and they know how to manage. But when the ecosystem is destroyed, and species numbers are reduced, then these pathogens will run to the nearest host. And we all know how that's working out with COVID. So they can be transmitted through ecosystem destruction or wet markets, or the wildlife trade or lab accidents, but principally by habitat destruction. So animal hosts have been reservoirs of these pathogens for a long time, but we humans have not. And the evidence in the case of the coronavirus seems to point to bats as being one of the reservoirs of the virus. But that's no call to go out and eliminate bats. They act as insect control, seed dispersal agents, and pollinators. The solution is not to eliminate the hosts, it's to fix the ecosystem. The United States government regards climate change as a natural security risk. How about regarding ecosystem destruction and biodiversity loss as a national security risk or a global security risk? Because pathogens can travel the world in a matter of hours. This figure illustrates how long it takes for a person or a pathogen to travel the world. The pale blue is approximately 1 hour or a few hours. Shading into purple is up to 20 hours. So destroying the rainforest here in Minas Gerais, Brazil, can loose a pathogen that can be in Washington, DC in a matter of 12 hours. So we need to rebuild a healthy ecosystem. And we need to do it now. And this is a map that we made here at Iracumbi in our GIS, a map of the coronavirus hotspots. You can see where they are. They're changing all the time. But basically, they are where there are large numbers of people and where the ecosystems, particularly in the tropical regions, have been destroyed. So in order to deal with this, we need to, as we said, rebuild the ecosystem, and we need to do it now. And does that sound like a big job? Does it sound like overwhelm? Well, we can just start with baby steps, just like the hummingbird. And for those of you who don't know the story of the hummingbird, and even if you do, it never hurts to hear it again. It's an indigenous story, a story that's indigenous across the Americas. I've heard it from Canada to the south of Argentina. And it says that once upon a time, the forest was on fire. The animals were all fleeing as fast as they could, all except the hummingbird. And she was flying towards the fire with a little drop of water in her beak. And the eagle is soaring overhead and he shouts, "Silly little bird, you really think you can put that fire out by yourself?" And the hummingbird dropped her water and looked up and she said, "Not all by myself, but I'm doing my part." So whenever you feel overwhelmed, just remember the hummingbird. And that's what keeps us going in days in the rainforest, because rainforests can be really overrated. There can be days when it rains for days on end, when the internet goes down, when everybody gets grumpy. I mean, rainforests are not all romantic and wonderful, but what keeps us going here at Iracumbi on those days is remembering the story of the hummingbird, and that's why we get out of bed and keep going, even if the car's stuck in the mud, the generator's broken down, the internet is out, and everybody's upset. So here's Iracumbi. And welcome to Iracumbi, where we are working on basically three things: planting trees, planting ideas, and planting hope. And the Iracumbi Rainforest Research Center is situated in the other rainforest, not the Amazon rainforest that everybody's heard of, but the Atlantic rainforest. And it's a very special forest. Let's just situate ourselves on the map. You see the map of Brazil at the top, you see the Amazon forest. And then down the coast, this skinny little patch of forest is the Atlantic rainforest. Originally, it was twice the size of Texas. That's before the Portuguese arrived. Those of you who've been to Brazil will know that we have the most wonderful beaches. And so when the Portuguese settlers arrived, they arrived along the coast and they stopped on the beaches and they built big cities. And where they built the cities, Rio, Sao Paulo, all the major cities almost in Brazil, are along the coast in the Atlantic forest. So the Atlantic forest was reduced from twice the size of Texas by 85%. So at Iracumbi, one of our major, most important jobs is ecosystem restoration. And if we're going to join the other organizations that are pledged to restore the forest here, how do we go about it? Well, one tree at a time, one kid at a time, because planting trees has to be accompanied by education. Just have a sip of water here. So restoring the forest one tree at a time, one family at a time, one kid at a time. And before we restore the forest, or while we're restoring the forest, it's really important to find out what's already there. So we monitor the flora. There are 20,000 different species of plants in the forest. So as you may suppose, that's a really big job. We monitor the fauna. As I told you, most of them are nocturnal. Here's a mountain lion. We monitor the sounds. So what is going on in the forest when we're not looking? What's going on in the forest that we can't see? And next steps for us, creating a smart forest. So using tech to transmit real-time data. This is LiDAR mounted on a drone. And LiDAR is laser imaging detection and ranging. And it sends laser beams down into the forest to detect the biomass and creates a 3D image. So sonar uses sonic beams, radar uses radio waves, LiDAR uses light emitted by laser. So by sending down the laser beams and measuring the speed and angle of the returning pulse, LiDAR can build an accurate 3D image of the different layers of vegetation and even down what is beneath the soil. So it's an amazing technology. And high tech apart, we need to roll up our sleeves and plant trees. And here's a picture of the forest nursery. But before I tell you how the forestry program is going, we need to back up a little, and that's back to April 2020. I'm sure everyone here remembers where they were in March and April 2020, when suddenly the sky fell in. Betty and Roger may remember that I was in Colorado with them, and there was some question about if I didn't get back to Brazil, I might still be in Colorado. So back to April 2020, and like people everywhere else, life at Irukandji came to a screaming halt. So our doors are closed to foreign students and researchers. Normally we have an average of 10 or 12 or 15 or more at different times of year, working with us, researching, doing internships, volunteers of different ages, people who want to come and save the world. And suddenly our doors are closed. We can no longer host in-person visits from the school kids. We've lost 30% of our income. And we're seriously wondering, as so many of us were back then, whether we were going to survive. So after trial and error, we put our education programs online. Now, you can't do that with kids in rural areas in Brazil because they don't have internet access. And they're not really able to study on their own. So after a lot of trial and error, we figured out that our education programs would have to serve youth. And we found, rather to our surprise, that our networks extended suddenly all across Brazil. We set up programs of environmental leadership for young people, very successful. So you can put your education programs online, but you can't plant trees online. So we were wondering how that was going to happen. Of course, we had a large nursery full of trees ready to be planted in the rainy season, which is October. And then in April, May, we were in the depths of despair and trying to figure out how we were going to deal with our forestry program. The first glimmer of hope. We are selected for a climate action fund, and that validates our commitment to put climate first. So it's time for us to sit down and reflect on how are we going to deliver our programs in this uncertain times ahead. And I don't know about you, but certainly here we had no idea that more than a year later they would be just as uncertain as they certainly are in Brazil right now. So we sat and we reflected, and this enforced period of reflection helped us to crystallize our call. planting trees, planting ideas, and planting hope. And we needed, like we all needed and need still, to be gentle with ourselves, gentle with one another. And it's just as well we thought of that because soon enough came the big challenge. We get this call from India. You guys are doing a good job with your tree planting, but not nearly good enough. You guys are planting 10,000 trees. That's not nearly enough. You need to plant 50,000 trees, 100,000 trees, 33 hectares, 80 acres or more. Are you crazy? So what's stopping you? Well, money, time, people. Stop and think. All you need is land, seedlings, money. If you step out in faith, the money will come. So we thought hard. We made a plan. We made a budget. Okay, we're going to need more heads, more hearts, more hands, and more money. So next step, find new partners. Stop and think, why plant trees? It sounds cool, but why do it? Because it's the cheapest, quickest, most effective way to store carbon and counter global warming. People need and want to plant trees. We are on the ground and we can do it. How to connect? We live up a dirt road from nowhere. How do we find them? And then the next miracle. A pro bono group of volunteers from Australia, Philippines, Sweden, and the UK. A lot of 0600, 6 in the morning meetings, the only time that we could fit in from Brazil to Australia. And their brief to help us produce a corporate prospectus to attract partnerships. So we work together, we focus our ideas, and we come up with a corporate prospectus. So let's just take a sneak peek at a part of it. So first of all, thinking about planting all those trees, it's like 5 times more than we planted before. Well, we've done it before. The picture on the left shows what Irukandji was like when we arrived at around 1990. And the picture on the right shows what it was like 15 years later. So this is the good news. Forests can be restored, can be regenerated. Forests are longing to be forests. And as long as you don't pave them over and build a shopping center, you can restore the forests. So we've done it before. We know that companies want to work with organizations like ours. All across the world, there's a growing need for companies to partner with environmental organizations for carbon absorption, but for all manner of other reasons as well that I'll tell you a little bit about. So the next thing we did was clarify our offer. Okay, here we are. Companies need us. We need companies. What are we going to offer? So what we can offer is we can plant trees to reduce carbon footprints. We can help companies become more sustainable. We can improve their ESG performance, environmental sustainability and governance, all things that they need to be doing because they're the right things to do, and they need to be able to show their shareholders that they do them. So enhancing their reputation. As Gen Z and younger generation are coming online and spending more money, they are demanding more and more good behavior from companies. They're demanding good ESG performance. It's not enough just to make a widget. They want to know that the company is really ethical and is really doing its part. So we figured we can help you implement your responsible business and support, of course, environmental research and education. companies have to be transparent in their financial disclosures. And companies more and more are wanting to align their business with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. Important when you're talking with corporates, and we've been learning this all the time, how do we deal with the question of the risk? So how do we protect your trees? Well, we're planting on private nature reserves and environmental protection areas. We have a long history of planting trees. We've been planting since 1999. We've planted 175,000 trees. We know what we're doing. Those are native trees alone. This area of Atlantic forest is protected by law, and heavy fines can be imposed for people who illegally deforest. And perhaps one of our strong suits is that we use geographical information systems to monitor the forest, to produce maps, to show totally transparently the areas that are being reforested, how the forest is growing. And that will later become even more clear when we are able to use the LiDAR technology and show, measure the biomass in the forest. So that's all very exciting. What is the benefit to a company for supporting it? Well, absorbing carbon, helping to mitigate climate change, supporting biodiversity. In our case, one of the critical things is creating jobs. Tree planting is a very labor-intensive business, and we are lucky to be in an area of smallholder farmers. So there are people available to help us at tree planting time. And we're even more lucky that most of the farmers here are producing coffee. Right now is the coffee harvesting time between May and August. And as the harvest is finished, then the farmers have more time. And that is exactly the time when it's time to get ready to prepare the land to plant the trees. So we're able to fit in very nicely. We're able to put the coffee harvesting and the tree planting together, and helping companies deliver on their environmental, sustainable, and good governance goals. And importantly, particularly in the current Brazilian threat of having the worst drought for 100 years, as we plant trees, they help to protect the water resources. Really important to break down the costs. So if you look at, we figured out it costs about $3.55 to plant a tree, and you don't just plant it, you have to look after it for the first 2 years, because there's a whole manner of weeds and stuff that will, if you don't protect it for the first 2 years. After 2 years, the trees, the seedlings are high enough to be able to survive. But it's tree planting organizations that just stick the trees in the ground will suffer very, very high losses. So 53% of our cost is actually in local wages, because it's not only the labor required to prepare the land and plant the trees, but also to monitor and maintain the trees for the 2 years. And then we have a 19% cost for making the seedlings in the forest nursery, and transport. And those of you who know the countryside around here, it's difficult to get around. The roads are dirt roads. Of course, you're planting in the wet season, so often they're impassable. You need really good transport. And some of the areas you can't even get any kind of tractor or any kind of vehicle into. There's a 14% here for the nursery that we're making the seedlings, and it's a year-round process making the seedlings. And when we finish, we'll be showing you a quick video which takes you through a year in the life of a tree seedling, so you see how it works. We have a small amount for administration and, of course, for contingencies. So this is how we demonstrate to the companies, where their investment money is going and how much it costs to plant a tree, plant and maintain a tree. So no sooner have we finished with that, then the next miracle occurs. And this is a team from Oxford University. And these are students from the business school, and they're finishing their postgraduate work. And they say to us, well, we'd like to help you look into the potential of carbon and getting carbon credits, which would be a way to sustainably manage your forestry program into the foreseeable future. So these students here from Poland, from Syria, from mainland China, Hong Kong, United States, and UK. And these students have been working with us for 10 weeks, and they have done a really thorough job of looking into the carbon market and how we can get into that and be able to finance the restoration program into the foreseeable future. So we're plunged into a round of carbon discussions, and this has all happened in less than 3 months. That we are coming up with a final report looking at the carbon credit market, how it will work for small amounts of carbon, for large amounts of carbon, for Delta Airlines, or for, you know, the corner grocery store, or even for an individual who wants to offset his or her carbon footprint. So these are some of the partners that have worked with us just during the time of COVID. Plant for the Planet, this was started by a 10-year-old kid from Germany. It now includes reforestation programs across the world, and it's all part of the Plant a Trillion Trees campaign. The Oxford group we just talked about. This happened last Sunday. The Rainforest Partnership from Austin, Texas, convened a 3-day conference and series of roundtables and workshops on different people working in rainforest conservation, from techies to impact investors, to academics, to practitioners. And we were lucky enough to take part in that. And since that, investors have been turning up and making dates to talk to us. And this really looks like the whole tree planting program, which started only in October, so in less than 9 months, has suddenly grown into this extraordinary thing. This is the Pact for the Atlantic Forest, a collection of Brazilian organizations that reforest. These are the people that produce the team from Australia, the Philippines. This is the Climate Action Fund, which just gave us a little funding to give us a chance to catch our breath while we were figuring out what we were going to do and how we were going to pivot our programs. It's a company in Hong Kong that contacted us and said, we are completely sustainable. Our packaging is completely sustainable, and we want to adopt you as your education program and your tree planting. This is a European Pharmaceutical Foundation. This is Global Giving, the platform, crowdfunding platform where we get a lot of our funding. And these are Partners of the Americas. So this all, sprang out of that very first connection with partners. And I want to give a big shout out to you, partners, because without you, this would never have happened. So at Irukandji, in spite of COVID, we have kept going. We have expanded our programs considerably. We are able to do for the climate what we know that needs to be done for the climate. We are now able to contact people across the world, and offers of help have come in, on all sides. And so it's all about partnerships. And the very first people that ever taught us about partnerships were Partners of the Americas. So thank you, partners, because without you, we wouldn't be here. So I just want to invite you to join us. One day they'll let us all out, or they'll let you out, or they'll open their doors and you'll be able to come down and visit us. KJ will be waiting for you. Thank you for paying a virtual visit to the rainforest with us. And, you know, together, we're going to continue to restore the ecosystem and support the climate. And then we'll all breathe a little easier. So before we get into questions and discussions, we just love to show you a quick video of the nuts and bolts of tree planting. And this video was shot in the months immediately preceding COVID, when we were still hosting students. And we made it in response to a request from that company in Hong Kong that said, you know, well, can you tell us a little bit about tree planting? Because, you know, what we like to do is a beach cleanup and we get that all done in one day. And how come it takes so much longer to plant a forest? So this was the video that we made in response to that. So if I stop sharing, would you be able to show that, Jackie? I'll stop sharing here, okay? Do you have the link, Jackie? You're muted. Okay, great. Should be some sound there as well, but it's only music, so it doesn't matter.
Stop sharing. Oh, there we go, right at the top. All right. So thank you so much, Binka. That was wonderful. I feel so much better, like I've just taken a forest bath. And we're looking for we can help you in your work. And I mean, it's just wonderful to hear that you've been successful in finding partners to continue your mission, because the last thing we need is to stop restoration of the forest. So I have a question for you. So why restore rainforests when we should be curbing emissions? Is there a trade-off? What is the priority?
No, we need to do both, of course. Of course, we need to do both. We're in a position to restore rainforests, which perhaps you can't do in Washington, D.C. You're probably emitting more carbon than we are because you're not in lockdown any longer. So we need to balance both, but we can't afford to just do one at the expense of the other. And one of the things perhaps about the carbon offsets is that we need to be sure that if, for example, we are selling carbon offsets, so planting so many trees for a company in exchange for the carbon offset, that's just not an excuse for continuing to emit carbon. You know, it's not just a sort of solving your guilt problem. So this climate crisis is so urgent that we need to tackle it from all sides. So we're all, you know, trying to restrict our emissions, but definitely planting trees, and particularly tropical trees, which grow so quickly, is one of the fastest and most effective ways of storing carbon, as long as you can protect them and they don't get burnt down or cut down, okay?
Well, on that vein, how do you navigate the political landmines?
With difficulty. There are so many aspects, you know, to be dealt with. And I think you just take a deep breath and just like the hummingbird, you know, one drop at a time, right?
Well, we invite anybody from our audience to ask Binka any questions on how we can help, what we can do, where we go from here.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Beth? Hi, everybody.
Yeah.
I used to be in the DC area, and now I'm out here in Portland, Oregon. But thank you so much, Binka, for your presentation. I just wanted to kind of follow up on Jackie's question because, you know, you get a lot of people excited about planting trees, you know, in your area, but at a certain point, you're going to have planted as many as you can plant, right? So what's the strategy for encouraging other parts of the country to be planted? Is there some kind of advocacy we can push for? I know it's political, but what are your thoughts?
I'm sorry, this sound is actually very bad at the moment. I think there's some interference. The question was, what is the strategy for replicating the project? Is that what the question is?
Sort of. I mean, you have only a certain amount of land in the area
Yes.
that
Yes.
Eric is, right? So what's the plan for after you get tons of volunteers and you've planted all the trees you can plant? What happens after that? How do you expand?
Oh, okay, well, we started by planting on small farms. At the time, this was like 4 or 5 years ago, they were suffering from a drought. And it's not really in the culture to be planting trees. It's more in the culture to be cutting trees and putting in coffee or cattle pasture. But when the climate change really, you know, kicked in and people noticed that, for example, their springs of water were drying up, then this is the moment to nicely persuade your neighbors to plant trees. And I'll tell you a story. We have a neighbor called Adam. Adam is, he's a very typical farmer. He has, lots of kids. He's a good farmer. He works like all the hours that God gives, and coffee is his big thing. And he was cutting trees on his mountain slopes to plant more coffee because he needed the money to buy the shoes to send the kids to school and so on. But, however hard he worked, he never could make ends meet. And then one day his spring dried up. And a spring is such an important thing in this area. It's such a water-rich area that every single house has its own spring. You would never share a spring, right? You share your wife, but you wouldn't share your spring, right? So Adam was in despair, and he came to us, and he's literally on our border, and he said, "You guys are always going on about planting trees. Of course, I can't see it myself, but I simply can't think what else to do. I sent my wife to the creek with a bucket, but she didn't think much of that. So, I need to get my water back. So if you say planting trees is good, I'll do it." So you don't plant trees around the spring, you plant them on the hill slope, in the water catchment area. And lo and behold, Adam just kind of made it through until the next rainy season, and then the spring came back. So he then became our best ambassador because, we could be telling people all the time and people wouldn't listen to us. But so it's a mixture of sort of education and necessity. Most people don't do anything until the last minute, and we're all guilty of that, right? Look at the climate crisis. So it's slow work. That's one of the reasons that we'd really like to be able to generate carbon credits, is because that would be, a regular source of income for the farmers. And certainly the culture is changing. It's changing partly because of a sort of slow, painstaking question of education, not only from us, but from, all kinds of people who are involved in this. And it's not sitting down in the classroom education, it's actually going out in the fields and working alongside them and having cups of coffee and saying, "So what do you think?" So yes, it is spreading. Yes, ideas are changing. Yes, the culture is changing. And yes, I think that even in the midst of all the dramas going on in Brazil at the moment, there's a really strong growing feeling that something needs to be done, particularly amongst the youth. So that's why we're so excited to be working with Gen Z. They are our hope.
Inga, if you combine the terms Brazil and resilience, you might come up with Brazilians. And I think you are demonstrating Brazilians to the nth degree. So congrats on that. Once you plant your trees and your ideas and your hope, then how do you combine artistic and scientific enterprises to nurture said trees and said ideas and said hope?
That again is the communications big piece. So if we have students in person, which we don't, I think we've all become so much more at ease with these conversations like we're having now. And we've been able to, through our online programs, really spread ideas. And I think that people in Brazil are understanding the need to preserve this extraordinary, ecosystem that we have. So all kinds of things, but it's basically down to education, whether it's education with a big E or a little e. And in our case, it's definitely a little e. It's informal.
That's that Brazilian
and just hanging out, being with people. Mm.
Thank you very much.
So Binka, I assume that the Mata Atlântica isn't the only area in Brazil that needs reforestation. Are you working with other areas to try to educate and start programs?
No, we have our work cut out in the Atlantic forest, but there is the large savanna region, the Cerrado, which is at the moment, it's basically used for industrial agriculture, which Brazil is very successful, you know, if you can call it that. We recently actually had a connection from a partner. I don't know if he's here, Kent Graves, who had been working in the northeast of Brazil. And we are working on, when we are able to get out and about and host people, actually bringing a group of students from the tech schools up there, bringing them down to Iracumbi to show them our reforestation model and our sustainability model, and then hope that they can take that back and sort of spread that there. That'd be exciting if that happens, but that we're tentatively hoping to do that next January. It's, you know, it's a big country, it's a 2-day journey. If we have a bunch of young people, they need to be accompanied by somebody who's going to keep them under control on the bus. And then make sure that when they go back, they're able to do what they came here to do. But I think that's going to be a huge possibility. And we're also looking at the idea of setting up an educational portal on our website in Portuguese, because there's a real shortage of sort of fun, informative material in Portuguese. In English, there's lots of it, but so we wouldn't even start by trying any of that. But I think in Portuguese, if we can upload some of our material and then ask people to send us videos, I think that could be a really useful tool for spreading our ideas. And we would like to be able to not only, you know, create reforestry projects that would be applicable to other areas and scalable and so on, but also educational. So we got a lot to do. Please come down and help us.
Love to.
Okay, may I ask one question, please? This is Betty from Colorado. I know that Iracumbi did collaborate with Colorado through DC to receive a grant for the eco leaders, and that is for younger people, not the college visitors and volunteers that I know are so essential. But could you speak just a moment or two about what you're doing there for the younger people to encourage them to think about the environment where they live?
Well, Betty, I'm sorry to tell you that at the moment we are unable to serve the younger students. We're all in lockdown. The schools have been closed for the last 15 months and probably will not reopen this year. We tried, we tried sending school materials out, but that really didn't work because the kids here don't have much tradition of learning how to learn, and they don't have, of course, internet access. So that's why very reluctantly we have to suspend our programs of bringing kids into the forest, which was a very successful program and will be again, and focus on the slightly older group, so sort of 16 years and up. And in fact, with our current funding from partners, that's what we're doing. We're working with environmental leaders. We thought that the group that we could most benefit would be the group from 16 to 25. And we advertised this, we put it out on Facebook and Instagram, and we got a ton of applications. And then we realized that they weren't all from people within that age range. So we then said, well, actually, guys, we're really trying to focus on youth. And we got such pushback. And people said to us, we're all youth. Get over it. So we're currently running these education programs with people, from 16 up to the sky's the limit. And of course, they're much the richer for having that mix. So we learned our lesson there.
Thank you. We're all young at heart, thanks to you.
You got it.
Yes, we are. Hi, Binka. This is Lachelle Richmond. I want to say thank you for your phenomenal presentation. DC partners appreciate you. Now, we also we actually advocate for environmental education through our program, Connecting Educators and Youth, which is headed by our chair, phenomenal chair, Ms. Christian Henry, and also with the support of Kathy Healy. So we are really passionate about the educational resources, and especially from the District of Columbia area, there's been a lot of changes, a lot of buildings, so a lot of trees have been torn down. So this is great information about resources and strategies we can try to use to still maintain that rainforest restoration in our area. So I greatly appreciate it. And I want to thank you for your presentation. It's very helpful to us.
Thank you, Lachelle. Great to meet you. Let's keep collaborating, right?
Absolutely.
Definitely, definitely.
Well, I want to be mindful of everybody's time. So if there aren't any more questions, I would like to thank Binka so much for this presentation. This was just wonderful. It's a long time in the making, but finally today we made it. We're grateful. We will continue our collaboration, and we look forward to invading Iracambe with lots of hands and helpers and happiness.
You're all invited. Thank you.
I'd like to add that we want to keep working with Colorado also, because we only knew about Iracambe because we knew what they were doing with Colorado. So we have great gratitude for them sharing.
Thank you, Kathy.
Hello,
We do.
Binka.
And
I
for
have-
you, Kathy, and for you.
Thank you very much, Binka.
Thank you,
I think
Dwight. Thank
we
you, partners.
might mention that we have 3 people from the La Paz partners who have been very interested in how to raise the consciousness for environmental things in La Paz. And so it's so wonderful that Monica and Danielle and Gary were able to join us tonight.
Well, hello everyone. Thank you, Kathy, for the invitation, and thank you for the presentation also. We are so glad to be here, and of course, we are getting more and more information to be part of this kind of projects and to take in advance these environmental programs. In fact, I am environmental student, but I have a lot of ideas, and I want to participate in this kind of projects, and we are so glad to be here. Thank you so much. Thank you for the invitation, and thank you for inviting us.
Well, we are just super happy to help. I'm just putting my email into the chat if anybody is interested in communicating. We'd love to hear from you. It's easy to remember, iracambe.com, and I'm Binka. And I would be just very happy to, help out and communicate and exchange news and views whenever you are available. Okay, and I'm glad you've got an internet connection. That's terrific. Oh, Andrea says I hope Brazilian politics do not interfere. Yes, I think we all hope that. Let's all hope that together, right? We just actually lost our environmental minister yesterday, which was entirely a good thing. So let's pray that the next one is less bad.
Well, I'll hope for the best.
Yes.
And I also want to thank Will Weber for manning the technology so that this could happen. So it's always the man behind the curtains that does the wonderful things. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, well, with that, keep up the good work. We'll be in touch. We'll move forward. We'll be inspired by the hummingbird with our drops of water. And continue foresting. So thank you, everybody, and good night. Abrazos. Abrazos a todo mundo.
Yes.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.